But right now, joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline, he joins us every Tuesday here on 97.3 ESPN. He is the big man on campus, Jeff Nadu. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff Nadu. Also check out the Big Man on Basketball podcast. And we'll get into more basketball right here with Jeff on 97.3. Jeff, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. So first of all, we got to remind the people that you gave everybody a couple of nice winners on Saturday. I had that over on the Gonzaga game. I had San Jose State in their game, and those were two winners on Saturday. So thank you very much, Jeff.
No problem, man. Whatever I can do to help.
So tonight, NBA season opening up for the everybody to watch. You know, obviously it's only two games tonight, but, you know, what are your thoughts on the two games tonight? Because I know a lot of people are, I know I'm interested to see about this Durant-Kyrie Irving experiment. I know a lot of people are looking at the Lakers as prohibitive favorites. So, you know, how are you feeling about the prime time matchups tonight and how these teams look out for the rest of the season?
Yeah, you know, the first game is really interesting, and I want to make it clear it's really tough to bet the actual first night of the NBA. Generally, it's small cards. It's generally higher-end, you know, marquee teams. It's hard to find value in these kind of games. But I think when you look at the first game, I have some interest in the Warriors. I bet them at 7.5. I thought it was a little too high. Look, could the Nets come in here and thrash the Warriors? Sure they could. But, you know, you mentioned the experiment. That's what it is. And it's an experiment, and it's an experiment that will either work or it'll take some time to work or it'll fail. Look, when you look at both Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, we know how good Durant is. Kyrie Irving's a bit of a lunatic, though, and we know that. I think early on it's going to take some time to kind of get familiarized with all these guys. There's only one basketball. I think tonight we could see a lot of isolation basketball from the Brooklyn Nets, and I think that's what the Warriors want. This is a good Warrior team. I know a lot of people will be mystified by the fact that Klay Thompson's not in there and Draymond Green's not going to play tonight, but you know, the truth of the matter is they still have Stephen Curry. They have Andrew Wiggins. They brought in Kelly Oubre. They have James Wiseman. They have some good bench players. I think they're a bit more underrated than this number. The public's back in the Nets, and I thought they would, but I'll take a little shot with the Warriors. I don't get too deep in the first night, you know, as far as the first overall night. The other game's tough. You know, it's two really good teams. I think the Clippers are a little overvalued, though. I think they come into the season worse than they were last year. You're depending on a guy like Paul George, who is not a guy I would want to depend on. Lakers should get the job done, but I won't be betting that one.
Looking at the Eastern Conference, when I see this Bucks team and the moves that they made in the offseason, specifically Drew Holiday and the impact that he has, how do you personally view them now compared to last year?
That's a great question. That's a question that I kind of asked some of my colleagues and people that I respect their opinion. When I look at them, they kind of remind me of the Sixers. I don't think that they got – I know it kind of might seem like they got better, but I don't know how really better they got. I still don't think they're a team that should be the number one team as far as odds in the East. Do they have Giannis? Yes. Do they have a happy Giannis now? Yes. He just got paid. But the truth of the matter is you lose Robin Lopez. He's a solid big for them. Yeah, they do get an upgrade at guard with Holiday, but you know, Holiday's a really good, solid player. Is he a guy to put them over the top? I'm not so sure. I think their two guard is a question mark. I don't know how ready Dante DiVincenzo is ready to be the guy. You know, Brook Lopez, good. I don't think he's Robin. So, yeah, I like some of the pieces they brought in, but there's still a lot of question marks. They didn't do much in the draft. I don't know if they got markedly much better. I still think they're a team that will miss it when it matters most.
Jeff, I've been doing some catching up on the NBA season and everything, and I've heard a lot of people say that this season is going to come down to who has the most depth. What team has the most depth? Because between COVID and injuries and the shortened offseason, I'm hearing a lot of guys saying, the depth of certain teams is going to kill them. Is there a team out there that has a lot of depth that you're keeping an eye on for them to potentially be a surprise this year?
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to surprise anyone, but I think they're going to do a lot better than people think as far as where people think they are. I think it's a safe case to make that the Dallas Mavericks are the second best team in the West. Yeah, I think they're better than the Clippers. I do. I think when you look at this roster, bringing in a guy like Josh Richardson, who we know in Philadelphia, I liked Richardson. I thought he was an all-around two-way player that I think could really benefit a team like the Mavs. They really missed that, guy that can kind of play alongside Luka that's not a big, that can shoot the basketball, that can defend. This was a bad defensive team last year. It was really their undoing. When they get Porzingis back healthy, you bring in a guy like Richardson who can be a starter. He can give you 20 a night if you need to. They have some great depth. I mean, Jalen Brunson, you bring in Tyrell Terry, who I thought was the best shooter in this draft. People don't give Willie Cauley-Stein enough credit. He's one of the better solid role players in the NBA that doesn't get enough credit. He's a solid offensive player. He's a really good defensive player. They also have Finney-Smith. They bring back Kleber. They bring back Powell, Trey Burke. This is a very deep basketball team. And I didn't even mention Tim Hardaway Jr., who's been a solid NBA pro. They're very deep. I think when it's all said and done, Luka Doncic will be the MVP. And I think he vaults the Mavs to the Western Conference Finals and maybe even into the NBA Finals. One other team to keep an eye on, I continue to bite on the Phoenix Suns. You talk about a team that I think is way better than they were last season. This is a team that should have been in the playoffs. The bubble, they went 8-0. They should have been in. I think they would have had a better outcome than the Portland Trailblazers did. But when you look at Chris Paul, he's a Hall of Famer. Him and Devin Booker, that's as good a guard do as you'll find. And I thought that one of the more underrated moves in the offseason was going out and getting Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder's been a top defender in this league for a long time. He can match up with LeBron. He can match up with, Luka. He can match up with some of the really good players in the West. Mikal Bridges is a solid defender as well, and they have some solid depth too. So, I'm looking a little bit outside of the box. You're not going to get any value on betting the Lakers, but I think the Dallas Mavericks and Phoenix Suns are all worth buys this year.
Speaking of depth, I want to get your opinion on the Sixers' depth. If you look at the bench, it looks something like Shake Milton, Furkan, Dwight Howard, Mike Scott, and maybe Tyrese Maxey beating out Matisse Thybulle. What are your thoughts on how the Sixers are from a bench perspective?
I mean, what you mentioned doesn't really move the needle, just to be honest. Dwight Howard's a good – I thought Dwight Howard was a solid pickup. They really haven't had a big that they can play big minutes with. I mean, people liked like Boban Marjanovic, but I don't care about funny comedians on the court. I want guys that can play. Howard can still play at his age, and he's been around winners. Mike Scott had a terrible season last year. I have no interest in him. Shake Milton, I think you have something there. He's really looked really solid as far as from what I've seen from him. I think Maxey could be interesting. He could either be really good or really poor. Keep an eye on Paul Reed, though, if he's able to make this team and be in there and get some minutes. He was a solid player at the Paul. He did some really good things there. But from a bench perspective, there's not a lot to like here, in my opinion.
Jeff Nadu joining us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Jeff Nadu. Check out the Big Man on Basketball podcast. Subscribe, download it. New episode I know is dropping tomorrow. And you want to follow Jeff for all of his latest picks, odds, opinions on everything going on in the sports world. And speaking of everything going on, I want to get your perspective on this James Harden stuff, because right around the time last night, the Heat were like, okay, we're out, were the reports. The report came out that apparently Harden is chucking basketballs at teammates. I mean, this situation is just bizarre.
It really is. Look, it's pretty simple. James Harden doesn't want to play in Houston. It's pretty simple. And, look, when you get people that are unhappy with where they are in their job, I mean, things are going to start happening. Houston's going to be a major fade coming to the season. I can't wait to bet against them. They're just a complete mess right now. Now you're looking at, the Denver Nuggets won't involve Jamal Murray in any deal for Harden. Look, Harden's getting a bad rap and all this. Harden just wants to, I think, play somewhere and get his, get what he wants. I, for the life of me, won't understand why the Philadelphia 76ers won't go and get James Harden. I don't know why they're so attached to Ben Simmons. It's really odd at this point. Especially with the history of Daryl Morey. When are we going to stop screwing around and realize how long are we going to throw away, the potential that we thought we had here, just waiting for a guy like Ben Simmons to create something? I mean, he hasn't done it in 4 years. I mean, what are we still doing here? Let me ask you guys, if you're with a woman for 4 years and she cheated on you, she didn't do anything you asked her to do, she was never helpful to anything in your life, I mean, how long are you going to hold on to her? Are you just going to keep holding on to her? No, eventually you get sick of it and move on to something better. James Harden is a proven player. He's the best scorer in this league. He wants to be with a winner. Him and Embiid would be terrific together. I think he'd get the best out of Joel. You have some really good ancillary pieces around them now. What is the obsession with Ben Simmons in this town? I'll never see it. I'll never understand it. And they're going to make the same mistake, guys, they did a couple of years ago when I think they could have had Kawhi Leonard. Now, if he would have stayed, that's the big question. But they could have traded Ben Simmons back then and maybe got a championship out of it because he went into Toronto and ended up winning one. It sucks. I like James Harden. It's a shame that he's having to deal with what's going on. I don't feel sorry for him. He makes a ton of money, but they're going to be a great fade to start the season. I know that.
Now, your description of Ben, and also the woman dating and she cheats on you about 100 times, kind of reminded me of, I feel like there's a similar concept in football, whereas you find these coaches who are like, I can rehab any quarterback, like when Gruden collects about 20 quarterbacks. I feel like, is there maybe a similar situation with Simmons where there's like every coach rolls around, like, I'm going to be the guy that unlocks that? Is maybe that what's going on here?
Yeah, it definitely could be. And I think that's something, across the street with the football team you have to deal with too, because, you don't want to give up on Wentz, but you also want to kind of, what would he look like with weapons? What would he look like with a different coach? What would he look like with a different GM? I get their thought process saying, well, we'll put another coach in here and see how that works. But, Ben comes out today and says, my mentality's never changed. I'm here to win a championship. Okay, that's fine, but you're not doing anything to get better to win a championship. One thing that I have had it with Keith Pompey show me photos of Ben Simmons shooting threes and warm-ups. Shoot him in the game or don't do it. I'm sick of seeing it. I'm sick of seeing the video. If you want to win a championship, take the steps. Look, I didn't want to be fat anymore, so I lost 100 pounds. I went out and I did it. Nobody made me go out and run in the hot summer. Nobody makes you go out and run in the cold. I do it because I want to be better. I don't think Ben Simmons has that bone in him. It doesn't seem like he does because he would have did it already, and he hasn't.
This is incredible. We're cracking up back here. It's phenomenal to hear the passion come out about Ben Simmons. It really is great. I want to transition to college football because we had the top 4 come out recently. Notre Dame slipped into that 4th spot. I just want to get your thoughts on it. I mean, the way I see it is, yeah, they did beat Clemson before, but we know that there were players missing. But if you look at, okay, who's 5, who's 6, A&M, and you have Cincinnati, no matter who's getting thrown into that slot, I don't think they have a damn chance anyway.
And that's the growing thought. One of my former, he's a good friend of me, Donnie Wright, said he has that thought process. He doesn't want to see your Coastal Carolinas. He doesn't want to see your Cincinnati. And I do understand. I mean, because as you said, if you throw Washington in there, you throw a Pac-12 team, you throw a G5 team in there, they're not going to compete. They're likely going to get destroyed. And people always have that hope that like a Boise State will do it or whatever. But the truth of the matter is, I mean, if BYU throws the ball to the end zone instead of the 3-yard line, Coastal Carolina likely loses. If Cincinnati had close calls. I mean, Cincinnati, I don't want to see them in the playoff. But then I do say on one wavelength, I want it like college basketball, where they at least have a shot. The problem that college football has created is they've made it to a point where if you're not in the Power 5, you just don't have a shot at it. And that's where they kind of push me off, because if you're good enough and you have the ability, you should get in. And, college basketball, if Alabama A&M wins the SWAC and then goes to the NCAA tournament and then beats 8 teams in a row, whatever it is, they could be the national champion. There's no issue. That's not like that in college football, and that's where I have an issue, though, as well. So it's a two-way street, but I wouldn't mind seeing Alabama Clemson again either. So.
No, and neither would I. And listen, I love college football. Like I'm over passionate. Like Hunter and Gil sometimes make fun of me a little bit for how much I love college football. But even for me, like I look around at the college football this year and like while it was a wild season, listen, I don't know if anybody's beating Alabama unless it's Clemson. And it doesn't matter if it was Notre Dame or Ohio State or their stupid excuses for why Iowa State and Georgia and Oklahoma were ranked in the top 10. At the end of the day, what's really going on here, Jeff, is it's a made-for-television product. This is not about what's fair. It's about making money. And let's be realistic, Notre Dame brings more eyeballs to the table than, let's say, Coastal Carolina.
Right, and that's it's a popularity contest. It's like that in every level of football. Like when you look at college football, Heisman Trophy, I mean, I remember a couple of seasons ago, I don't know if you guys remember this guy, but played for Navy, Keenan Reynolds.
Yep.
I thought he had the best season of any quarterback in the country.
He was incredible. He was amazing.
Yeah, he wasn't even invited. And it's a popularity contest. It's like, it's like being a homecoming queen. I mean, it's usually going to go to the prettiest looking girl or the best looking guy or whatever. That's how it goes. Politics is politics, and people want to see Clemson. People want to see Notre Dame. And that's where, for me, college basketball will always reign supreme over college football, at least in my eyes. I know the South will disagree, and, numbers standpoint, they would agree. But, from a sheer competition standpoint, the NCAA tournament is the best product because, and like I said, if you're the Citadel and you win enough games, you have a shot to win. And I like that. In college football, you don't have that.
He's Jeff Nadu. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Jeff Nadu for all of his picks throughout the year. He drops those videos randomly throughout the day. You may want to hit that notification icon so you get the alerts when Jeff's putting out those videos. Also, check out the Big Man on Basketball podcast. New episode drops tomorrow, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I actually have a great episode tomorrow, guys. I have an interview with Hot Sauce dropping from the M1 Mixtape Tour. I got a really cool interview with him. We talked about all sorts of cool stuff and just about his life. I think he's a fascinating guy, and it was one of my basketball bucket list items to talk to him. So, that'll drop on Wednesday. We'll have picks as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I want to hear that interview for sure. Big Man on Basketball. Hit the subscribe button. Download the podcast when it drops tomorrow. As all guests, Jeff appeared on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Great stuff today, Jeff.
Thanks, guys. Always appreciate you having me on. Have a good holiday.